Welcome to Behind the Build. I am your host, Jonathan Jacobs. And today on the show, the podcast, whatever this thing is, I have Bill Dewson from Dewson Architects.
Hello, Jonathan. Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
I thank you for joining. I have been looking forward to having you on since the concept of this started. Bill and I met a number of years ago. I've been a big fan of his architecture since I started with Walden. There was this beautiful picture on your website. I don't know if it's still on there. It might be. The picture of you eating cake.
Oh yeah,
does it still exist?
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar with this, I suggest you go onto Bill's website, look up Dewson Architects, and you'll see it. And what that picture meant to me was that there was a man here who was a human, and he had a great sense of humor, and he was willing to put that out there. And so since seeing that picture, I was like, I got to call him. And so met you a number of years back to join one of our projects. We've been in contact here and there. But again, I've always been a fan of what you put out for architecture. And so having you on here today is very exciting for me.
Well, it's great to be here. And we thank you for calling. And
of course,
that picture was our first humanization of photography, putting humans into photos. The photographer Arnaud from Revelature suggested, look, let's get some people in. I think that's probably 8-10 years ago that we did that.
Yeah.
And we said, let's have some fun. So there was a cake, and we just cut a piece of the cake and said, let them eat cake. And I have the knife up kind of menacingly. And we laughed and said, yeah, okay, let's put it. And it's on the website. It's always been on the website.
And it's great because I think, generally when a lot of people, I know that the majority of listeners are within the community, but if you're not, you might think of architects or designers in a certain way. And I feel like that image really humanizes who you are. And so I start with that. There are many things that I think we'll discuss over the time today, but I always go and ask people when we start out, what were some of the early experiences you had in your life that led you down the path to becoming an architect? Was there a certain defining moment that for you that led you down that path?
Well, it was, I think I've always been interested in it. I was a kid that was playing with Lego, Kenner panel and girder. I built tree forts. I was doing dinky toys in the mud with blocks, and I would be visualizing. Some of my first creative visualizations would be in bed when I was 10, saying, oh, there's a 2x4 in the attic that I can use to go from this tree limb over to that V. And there's my split level on my tree fort back in the willow tree. Oh, and I'd fall asleep to that sort of stuff. But I didn't say, okay, I'm going to become an architect. Obviously, I was just loved kind of building.
Yeah, creating.
When I was 12, 13, my parents were fortunate enough to purchase a property and hired an architect. And when the architect came over with the conceptual drawings, very well laid out, he had 3 concepts, blueprints. In those days, you drafted it out on Mylar with plastic lead. And he came with these 3 designs, one of which hit my parents' hot buttons.
Yeah. And
they went their ways, and I stayed up and just stared at these drawings going, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I never really thought about anything else. Just went from there.
I'm going to tell you something. I don't think I've ever said this with anyone that I've talked to about all of this. When I was young, I actually used to take the dimensions of my room and I would reallocate where I was going to put my bed and where I was going to move my shelf. And I was constantly moving my room around as a child in the same context.
Yeah.
And same thing, building tree fort. I remember that in my cottage. I connecting with that stuff. And so you're enamored by these plans. And so did you say to yourself, like, is this something that I could go do for myself? Or were you still interested in other things? And then how did it go from there?
Just kept asking questions, starting with the architect. They became very good friends of my parents, the architect that designed the house. and I would ask him questions. And the high school that I went to had drafting classes, so I took the drafting class, and I loved doing the very strict drawing. And there was art classes, and I loved art and loved math. And
Was this all here in Toronto, or
this
where
is
did you
all
grow up?
in Port Credit.
In Port Credit, okay.
It was just newly become Mississauga.
Okay.
And that led to, I think the next critical point was my dad was building a warehouse. He was shifting his business. He was expanding. He needed to build a warehouse. And Rod Robbie, the architect of the Sky Dome, came in and was doing the documentation for the warehouse. And my dad asked Rod to talk to me. And he did. And he named 3. I said, where should I go to school? And he named a place, University of Illinois, which I didn't know, and wound up going there.
Oh, interesting.
And he said that was what's so great about the University of Illinois. I hadn't heard of that as an architectural school here up in here.
I'm glad you asked that question, because I was going to ask that question.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah. Well, and he said it's an incredible engineering school.
Oh.
And if you want to know how to build, go there. And I went, and I was the peripheral attributes of the place, besides being a great architectural school, was that it was a Big Ten school, a big university, and I love that whole feel.
Yeah.
So I went there for undergraduate.
Yeah.
Took a year off. There was a year in Paris at the architectural school exchange program in Paris. We were in the stables of the Palace of Versailles, where we lived and were taught.
What no one just saw was, as you just reminisced upon that memory, this like massive smile that went across your face thinking about living.
Oh,
living
it was great. You know, we were sketching tours, and we were intermingled with the French students. The French students would come back in master program as an exchange student, so we would see them back again if we went back to University of Illinois, which I wound up doing after a gap year.
Yeah.
Finished my master's. And
before we go to the masters, I'm curious to touch on some of the stories of what was it like living there
in Paris.
Yeah, like, you know, you're young, you're impressionable, you're interested in architecture, and you're in Paris.
Oh well,
so
it was fabulous. So there's all the art and architecture of Paris. We had 2-week breaks every 6 weeks. Okay. So we would travel up to Amsterdam. We traveled down to, or I would travel down to Barcelona. Everybody would go different places. Wound up going to Greece, going down to northern Italy, and looking at architecture throughout Europe and sketching. And it was like a forced sketch tour of Europe.
So did you just bring like a sketchbook and pencils with you on every single of these outings?
Yeah. Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah. So fast forward, took a gap year, came back to the University of Illinois, and did a master's with a major of structural engineering.
Oh, okay.
Got into Diffie-Q and beginnings of quantum mechanics, and that was a really struggle. That was I'm wiping my brow.
Yeah, he's just wiping his head like, oh my God, I remember what that challenge was like.
Got through it, living in a chicken coop converted to a studio outside of the campus. And I see you have a motorcycle here. I had a little Honda 200 motorcycle that I go in and out to campus, and graduated, took another year and traveled around, was a roofer and a framer in Seattle.
Oh, so that's where the West Coast vibe came from.
A little bit of that.
A little bit, yeah.
I think a little bit of most of the West Coast vibe comes from, or the timber vibe.
Yes, fair.
Comes from traveling in Asia. I took a year off after I was licensed, so I just jumped ahead a little bit here.
Yeah, okay, so then hold on, let's go back. This is like a choose your own adventure book, but we accidentally went to the wrong page.
Yeah. Yeah, so do you want me to get into this much detail?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I go across, I was a roofer in Colorado, wound up traveling up the West Coast, stopped in Seattle, stopped into a friend. I had $100 in my pocket, and a friend of mine from school had a boat. He was living on a boat, and I said, "Hey, could I stay on your boat for a night?" And he said, "Yeah, you can stay on a night, but one night." And
I put the parameters on that.
Get a job. So the next day, I got out, had to look for a job, and found a job that day in a rooming house that night. And I had to ask the woman at the rooming house, "Would you allow me to stay for 2 weeks until I get my paycheck?" And she said, she was kind. "I don't know if you could do that in this day and age." And stayed there, worked as a laborer, then a carpenter, a rough framer, building a 10-unit condominium wood frame on the coast on Puget Sound. And then wound up, I was trying to get some architectural work at that point.
Right. I mean, you're getting it just in a different way.
I'm getting it a different way. And
Yeah.
it was, okay, this has been fun. Now I need to, start my apprenticeship.
Yeah.
The apprenticeship period in architecture after you're graduate, there's the minimum 3-year process to get your license. And I couldn't find any work at that time in Vancouver. So I came back to Toronto and worked, found a job with a local architect, Alan Ray. He was just finished his practice, and he had broken away from Bregman and Hammond.
Okay.
And started his own firm, and I assembled his drafting desks, and we made a deal. And the deal,
you'll be the in-house carpenter?
Well, I was the boy Friday at the beginning, and the deal was I would stay with him for until I got licensed for however long it took, and as long as if he would give me experience in all the various areas of architecture, what are required for your experience record book. And he said, "That's fine, but you have to stay with me until you get licensed. So I'll train you, but you need to stick with your end of the deal. You can't be hopping." I said, "Okay, it's a deal."
And just to be clear, because you passed out your hand right there. This is a handshake type deal, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah, there were no employee contracts.
Right. I just want to say that because nowadays everything becomes so formal. Yeah. There are still businesses that exist with handshakes.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of what we have with the people at Walden is handshakes.
Oh really?
Well, I mean, there's agreements on contracts, but in terms of like the merit of the trade, yeah. I mean, we go meet with them, and then you have a handshake with them to say, "Yeah, we want to try to find a way to work together." Sorry.
Just a tangent on that. Yeah. Well, really, most contracts are handshake and trust. You can only write down just the basics of any contract, whether it's an employee contract or any of our fee proposals contracts. We're entering into trust relationships.
100%.
You contracting and building. There's so many decisions and so many avenues that you go down that you have to build trust and
relationships. Yeah.
Or it doesn't work.
Yes. Sorry.
And the ones where you can't do that, they fail pretty quick.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
they're like a piece of hair under with a lighter below it.
Yeah. That's a good analogy. So worked with Alan until I was apprentice and stayed another about 6 months and planned to go to Asia because I'd never been educated on Asia. It had been Western civilization, Ionic, Doric, Corinthian columns, Baroque, Renaissance, Rococo, Neoclassical, all of it, right up to postmodern and deconstructionism. I said, I don't know a thing about the other part of the world. So I had a rockhopper bicycle, 15-speed bicycle. I painted black, put it in my car, drove across Canada to Vancouver and flew to Southeast Asia and went through Southeast Asia, India, Japan. And I was planning to go through China, but it was 89 and Tiananmen Square happened while I was in Nepal, and I was going to go into China, and they wouldn't allow me to go in.
Yeah.
So that experience was phenomenal, and there I continued the sketching I did. At that point, I was now doing watercolors, and I would ride my bike around And for instance, in India, I'd follow architecture, and I would go to temple and temple to temple in southern India and wherever, and I'd drive in or ride in and look around and find a spot and sit and start to sketch the temple. And kids would gather around and say, "What are you doing?" Just like the caricatures you see in the park.
Yeah.
You know, and they'd look over my shoulder and they'd start telling me about the temple. And then I'd finish the watercolor, and one or two of the kids would take my bike and say, "Can I ride the bike?" Because they have all these old Hero bicycles that were just 1-2-gear bicycles.
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh," and they go off for an hour. Talk about trust.
And I was going to say, you hope you get that thing back.
I go, "Whoa, okay." And then they come back, and then I'd finish the watercolor and I'd write down what they were telling me. And they said, "We're not going for dinner." And I said, "Yeah, let's go for dinner." And I wound up then afterwards going to inner sanctum sanctoriums of the temples that they would take me into.
Wow.
Like places that I would never see. The young adults and kids would just show me around.
Right.
It was fantastic.
And were you doing this on your own?
Yeah.
Completely on your own?
Yeah. I didn't know anybody. When I landed in Madras, I didn't know anybody.
Language barriers,
No.
you know, like you're not bringing traveler's checks, or are you bringing travelers? Like what?
Oh boy. Well, I had traveler's checks.
Okay.
Their little pouch.
Yeah, if it's just everyone understands this. If you're listening to this and you're wondering, what did we just say? Traveler's checks?
Yeah.
Digital currency didn't exactly exist back in the day.
There was no digital currency.
You needed to have currency with you
That's right.
in order to be able to survive. So you could not just swipe a credit card, because credit cards weren't accepted everywhere.
That's right. And a level of security with traveler's checks, because if they were stolen, they couldn't be cashed.
Yeah.
So it was a little one step more secure than currency. And it was I had a camera. I was photographing as well.
Right.
And so it was film. And I'd purchase 2 or 3 rolls of slide film, Ektachrome slide, Polaroid or Kodak Ektachrome film. And it was very judicious about the photograph you would take. I would take quite a bit of time making sure that I captured in this one shot as much of what I could.
Yes.
I'd be in this temple in southern India, and I'll never be back. And
Especially in those rooms that they got invited into with the families. Like,
that's right. And I got invited to weddings and
you were a wedding crasher?
I was a wedding crasher.
Look at you.
Yeah. 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 I met these guys. I met these guys in southern India. They were trying to sell me jewelry and tankar paintings, stone ground religious Buddhist religious paintings. And I was, okay, like this. And they said, "Well, look, would you like to come to Kashmir?" And I go, "Absolutely, let's go to Kashmir." And say, "Okay, well, meet me we're down in Madurai in southern India." And they go, meet us in Delhi, 2 brothers, meet us Delhi at this hotel on this date, and we'll take you to our home in Kashmir. And I did, and they did. And I wound up living with them for 4 weeks.
Come on.
Designed a Kashmir. They had a piece of property. I designed a house for them in Kashmir. And they, their pay was a rug, was a carpet. I don't have it.
Okay.
They were going to send it. It never came. But
yeah, I'm gonna tell you. I mean, to me,
Anyway.
the payment in that is what you just did, and that was tell the story.
Mm.
What
Oh yeah.
a prolific story.
Oh, it was a great year.
Were you not standing outside of that hotel debating? Like, were they there when you arrived, or were you standing there and waiting, like saying, are these guys going to arrive?
I arrived at it was a hostel.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
cheap.
Yeah.
Everything. It was very inexpensive.
Right.
I think I was in India for 6 months for less than like $4,000 or something like that. Anyway, it was in the afternoon. I came in, I checked in. I asked the guy at the desk, "Do you know, is Georgie and Hussein here?" And they said, "Yes."
You throw your hands in the air.
And I go,
yes.
really? Okay. And around let me call them. And within a minute they were there, and we were high five,
Yeah.
while we were doing Indian gyrations and things like that. Yeah, it was, and then I threw my bike on a bus, and we took the bus into Kashmir. Fabulous time. And then up into Leh Ladakh, did a huge ride up over mountain passes into the farther northern part of India, Leh Ladakh, which is it's a dry desert, cold desert, Buddhist influenced, and yes, a place that I'd never experienced.
Right.
But looping back to where I get the sort of the timber idea, and that was more really Japan and Thailand, and going through their architecture and temples, and sketching these temples and photographing and watching carpenters build. They would be building and repairing.
Yeah.
All through Nara and Kyoto. I went all the way down to Kitakyushu, up into the mountains, and would see the Toshimi. I might be pronouncing that. Were these great grass huts that were centuries old. Talk about sustainable architecture, wood sustainable architecture.
And they're all designed to be able to take it apart.
Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. They take them apart and then replace the rotted elements.
Yeah.
So that just sort of hit me. I didn't kind of realize. I think subconsciously I just sort of absorbed mass timber construction in that way. And so came back after a year.
A changed man.
A different guy.
Yeah.
And back to Toronto late in the 90s.
Yeah.
And this was 89 that I was away, the year of 89, and back in 90, and wound up being hired by Bregman and Hammond, Alan Ray's previous employer. He was a partner there.
Yeah.
And worked on the Ballet Opera House. The one that was done by Moshe Safdie, and it was designed. It was right at the time Peterson was in. There was a liberal government, and it was starting the recession. And that period, development collapsed, and there was a real pause on all construction. Campo is a developer that went under. Olympia in York, and they quashed the Ballet Opera House. I remember Bob Ray got into power as NDP, and he took the provincial money out. The municipal money collapsed after that. So did the federal money, and they didn't build this beautiful Ballet Opera House. It was going to be at Yonge and Breadalbane, between Yonge and Bay, and at Breadalbane and college. Anyway.
Yeah. So
I'm going down. Is this too much?
No, not at all. No, this is what this whole thing is about. No, because if
you don't want to hear my theories on architecture.
But look, if you're going to understand, if people are going to take an appreciation of where we all come from, and all of us have our different experiences that lend us to being who we are and how we view the world and how we view what we do professionally.
Yeah,
it's these experiences that help shape you.
Yeah.
So no, this is never too far. Yeah. Continue to go further.
Okay.
You know.
Well, I'll let you stop me.
So tell me. So you it's now 89 leading into the 90s.
Yeah.
So I assume you've still got to finish your hours.
No, I was a licensed architect. I was a licensed architect.
Oh, okay.
I finished my hours and was I got my license,
yes.
And then
it was you did the extra 6 months.
And then,
you said that.
That's right.
Yes.
Passed all the exams. And so now I'm back, and it collapsed. Sorry, the Ballet Opera House collapsed, which was unfortunate. But I did make a great relationship with Moshe Safdie and his firm. Mm-hmm. Wound up taking actually a government job. Eventually, we were all let go that were working on that
the Opera House.
Opera House.
Yeah.
And I wound up getting back after a stint of really unemployment, coming back into the circle of Softy with his construction of a theater. He was doing a development with Pantasia's theater, and I was hired to be the architect of record up here in Canada because they didn't have an architect. You need somebody in the province of Ontario.
Yeah, for the permitting, etc.
And spent and was hired through a project management firm, Kaufman Engineering, and spent 4 years there project managing and being architect of record on a couple of projects that were affiliated with Softy, both with Garth Grabinski and a live end. So we were doing live theaters. One was a condominium development and live theater at the Pantasia's place that never materialized. But the next ones did. The Vancouver Theater that's now out in very close to Softy's library in Vancouver. I was the architect, the project architect on that job. And when I finished that, I decided to go out on my own.
And so what year was this?
96.
Okay.
And just went on my own.
Well, it kind of sounds like you're about to go. This is like the pilgrimage to Asia.
It was, yeah, I had, my wife sort of goes, oof. I had a young daughter.
How old when you went on your own?
I was 96. I was 39.
Yeah.
I had a 1-year-old daughter, and my wife was pregnant with our second son. And we were living over on Davisville. And yeah, away we go. And I gave sort of 2 weeks notice. Quite different now. You would have probably, after 4 or 5 years, I would have demanded, X months of, I'm invaluable. And
do you know who I am?
Do you? And by the way, you've abused me.
Yeah. Oh God.
All the way through, and I didn't get enough vacation and sick leave. Anyway.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Do you know how many vacation days I didn't get and you didn't pay me for?
Yeah. I should probably, it was the reason I left. I'll say this. The reason I left is that I was being paid just a pittance but just happy to have it.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, 30-40% of architects in architecture in 1990 were not in architecture by 1995. That's how slow it was. That was a real recession.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that or you're too young.
No, I was too young.
And housing prices dropped by 20%.
Yeah.
And once they started they haven't stopped climbing since 95, 96. But I was being paid a pittance, and they asked me to do a theater, do the whole project architect for combining the Lyric and Apollo Theater on 42nd Street in New York. And I said, fine, but you got to double my salary. And they said, we'll give you a 10% raise. And I said, and just walked down the hall and wrote my letter of resignation and gave them 2 weeks notice. I was a bit of a dummy.
I mean, I disagree. Come on. Know your worth.
Anyway.
You knew your worth. Come on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, all you would have had to say at this interview would have been, and now I'm still there.
Yeah.
And I designed that theater on 42nd Street, and I was barely getting paid, and the daughter was born, and we couldn't afford diapers. My son was born, we couldn't afford the diapers for him.
Actually, I probably wouldn't be here.
Right, exactly. No, that was a good decision. So 1996.
So 96, I opened up Dewson Architects. William Dewson Architects at that time. William Dewson Architect.
Depends on the day. Some days you might have had more personalities than one.
Yeah. And changed that to incorporated 10 years later to William Dewson Architects, and then changed it to Dewson Architects about 8 years ago as a beginning of my succession plan.
Very smart.
And started to get it away from my name to, I don't know, but a little bit of just Dewson, the brand, and
Yeah.
so that my guys, and I've got a couple of guys that have been with me for one for a couple of decades and another for just celebrated 10 years. And I've been, we've been passing shares down, and we're now in the midst of the succession plan. So
that's very forward thinking, because I will generally say that I don't know that everyone does that. I really don't. I think that there's a lot of people out there that are, maybe I shouldn't say it, but generalize it. But
well, I think what you're probably trying to get at, and I came to this crossroads is 8 years ago. I was approaching 60, and I'm going, man, what happens? Most of the business was coming in through me and through my name, and guys had been with me for a while, and so if I go, they just fizzles out, and now I'm leaving some people that are later in their career and they haven't established their name other than being with me, and so I needed to build it into something more of a generic or brand or so that they could to carry on their careers.
Yeah,
and it's worked out. It's been great because they've really taken ownership, and they are now bringing in business themselves, and business is coming to them, not through me. And it looks like if I get hit by a bus, they'll carry on, and so that makes me that gives me happiness, satisfaction.
What happens if you're hit by an asteroid?
Well, that's coming.
Yeah.
I'm really more worried about the solar flare that knocks out our juice.
Yes. I mean, that's coming.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so you just went to succession planning, but we've kind of skipped over like the meat of the growth of the business, which is probably some of the more interesting details in this, because part of what we discussed when we were having lunch was like you're largely a residential practice, and there's a whole other stream of discussion that I want to go into, and I'm going to make sure that we get there. So what I wanted to ask was, I'm not going to go into like what were some of the first projects like. More so, I wanted to talk about what has it looked like for you as your focus was mainly on residential. It wasn't on commercial initially when you started your own practice, right?
Correct.
So how do you feel you were able to foster a brand that allowed people to find you, and for you to be able to bestow all of this worldly travel that you've experienced into a connection with them? Because there is an important element of architecture that relates to their experience and who they are culturally, whatever it is.
Well, all of that experience very soon after I opened up, like 1997, began a project with a very close friend of mine, and actually best man at my wedding, a fellow by the name of Fred Daly. And he purchased a piece of property on Georgian Bay on a beautiful rock facing west. But I think it's a 12-acre site and can be severed into two beautiful points. And on one of the points, and I'd known of the property, and I was just thrilled when I actually told him about it. And I couldn't afford to buy it myself. If I could have afforded to buy it, I would have. It was just beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And so I
just want to say this. Think if you had taken that $100 that you had in Seattle and you had invested that in Apple stock.
Yes. Oh.
Anyhow, sorry. I just took away from your story.
I missed. I had a lot of missed opportunities.
Well, you didn't miss the boat. You didn't miss the boat because you slept on the boat, but you missed the boat in the stock.
I missed the stock.
Yeah.
I missed the stock boat.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
So we very quickly decided that we wanted to do a timber frame.
In 97.
Yeah. And we found a builder, and a builder had a brother who was out in Horsefly, BC, and he knew of an Austrian timbersmith who knew of two trees that had been bug killed. It had been denuded by a bug. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
It was a beetle, or they were denuded, but standing free, and they were old growth, 400-year-old, two Doug fir trees. And he said that he would mill them or fell them, drag them out, mill them, join them, pack them, shrink wrap them, put it in a trailer or in a container and ship it to Parry Sound, and we could barge it out to the site. Just give me the design. So Fred and we developed this design and worked very closely with Fred. He's a great buddy of mine and loves to build, and this was his
and he's got ambition.
And so we were very, very iterative process with the client.
Yeah, Fred, I like you. I don't know you, Fred, but I like you.
Yeah, and so we designed this. It was a 52 by 52 square floor plan, and had a lot of feel of Japanese architecture. And it wasn't Japanese joinery, but it was Austrian timbersmith joinery. There were a few shear connections, but no bolts. It was all mortise and tenon.
Yeah.
And the guy felled the trees, milled them to the design that we did. He was about to ship them out, and some people from Japan came and saw them. He did this job for $75,000. He did this, which doesn't sound like much at all.
No, it's
it was quite a bit there. Just before he was going to ship them, and he built a little model, and Japanese guys were coming and looking for him to do a project for them in Japan. And they saw this model and they saw the container, and they offered him $150,000 for the container. And the guy said, "No, I can't do it. It's not right." And it came to us.
Did.
Oh yeah, it came to us. And they shipped it out and they built it, and it assembled, and he assembled it. We built the platform.
Yeah.
Concrete piers, drilled into the rock base and created a platform, and he built it on top of that platform. And it took him 3 days to assemble it. He had a crane, had a cherry picker we got out there, and used the cherry picker to bring some massive boulders into the building for hearths, this beautiful Georgian Bay granite. And he assembles it, the frame, and we took a diagonal dimension, and it was out by 1/8 of an inch.
Come on.
1/8 of an inch.
If you're a layman listening to this podcast, and I don't mean like a layman, but I mean, or a lay person, let's say, actually, so I can be politically correct.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't understand what 1/8 of an inch is, hold your thumb up, look at the white portion of the tip of your nail, and that's more or less, depending on whether you have recently done a pedicure or not, that is 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah.
That is very, 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 very cool story.
Very, very, very precise.
Yeah.
And the rings on this Doug fir were as tight as, well, I've never seen anything tight.
Yeah.
They were, and he left, and the night we had a beer, and he cried.
I believe it. Because
he was so
emotionally enthralled in what this project was, and to have passed up the opportunity because he had the integrity, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many people nowadays, if they were sitting in that same scenario and were offered double, would hold on to the original agreement?
And that was a handshake agreement. We had no contract.
I believe it.
It was an agreement through the contractor's brother to the Austrian timbersmith.
Yeah.
And
do you have pictures of this?
Oh, of the building?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
I got pictures just of the frame.
So can I ask? So if you're listening, part of what I do with the podcast is that I have an Instagram account. And on our Instagram account, I give everyone that's on here an opportunity to be able to share the work that they've completed. They get to pick whatever they're going to want to share. Mm-hmm. Okay. So my request, if possible, Bill, is that as one of the 4 projects that we look at to share on Instagram, actually you can do more than 4. You can do 10 pictures per post. Can we share some of the pictures of what this project was?
Absolutely.
Excellent. So if you're listening, go to the Behind the Build on Instagram, look it up. It's a blue logo, and you'll be able to see what this looks like, because how fascinating is this? Unbelievable. Okay. Sorry, I'm done my rant there.
That's okay.
Because I want to see this. I can't wait to look at the pictures for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to me, if you're wondering why this podcast exists, everything you just heard is why.
Oh,
that's it.
Yeah.
because this industry is largely based on an ability to collaborate with people that are like-minded, that want to pursue some form of art and perfection in art. And that is how you live in an environment, and you create this environment within the environment that you're in. And what you just described, like, that encompasses everything that we always hoped this podcast would be. Great story.
Oh,
I'm right now just
well, I'm glad.
yeah, I feel fulfilled right now.
Yeah.
So
Wow. It's so.
And this is 1997.
This is 97, and this Fred said to me afterwards. He goes, "You got to find a way to repeat this." And what he was meaning at that point was almost commoditize it, but just be able to repeat this, because it really is a beautiful space. And how could we do this again and again? And I thought about, are you happy with if I reuse this 52 by 52 square plan? And he said, yeah, you can use that plan. I was sort of thinking in that regard that I could copy the design. But as it's turned out, two critical seeds were sown in my psyche. There was one, building with wood and mass timber.
Yes.
And the sustainable nature of it.
Yeah. Okay.
That these trees were going to just fall and rot, and you can even take that to the nth degree, that they fall and rot and decompose, and the method would go up. But we've taken the carbon, and that embodied carbon, and placed it in this beautiful structure, which should stand as long as the temples in Japan. It'll stand for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
I'm just knocking on wood. If you hear that knocking,
that's the arms of the chair that we're in.
Yeah, and
that I built. They're still standing.
They're beautiful, very comfortable. That the sustainable aspect of it, and then the prefabrication, seeing it assembled so quickly.
Yeah,
and with joinery, is just sort of stuck in my head. So mass timber being prefabricated and assembled, prefabricated offsite.
Yeah.
And
labeled,
then assembled,
shipped, and then reassembled. Yeah.
It just burrowed its way into my psyche. And
so that's exactly, you're doing a beautiful transition for me here, because that's where I wanted to go next. I wanted to talk about, I'm essentially in some ways skipping over elements of the next 30 years worth of work, but at the same time, I know that they've been always a part of the work over those years,
mm-hmm.
and they continue to be, and even more so now. So I know sustainability, carbon, and because you mentioned it, and mass timber are big influences in the way that you are trying to output your architecture nowadays, and
mm-hmm.
and dating back to 1997.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that now also building code has changed, and now they're allowing
mm-hmm.
and promoting mass timber structures.
Mm-hmm.
And what was normally a residential based practice is now, as you said over lunch, not quite that anymore. While
mm-hmm.
it is, it's multiplied in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that?
Well,
Tell
we're probably 50-50 custom residential. We still do a lot of custom residential work. We cottage work and inner city work, historical restoration work, working with heritage preservation zones in downtown Toronto, and we're doing a mountain camp up in Montana, which is all historic mass timber construction. Meaning the concept of that particular one is we want to make it look like it was originally built
1700s,
150, 200, 150 years ago, like in the mid 1800s.
Yeah.
But it's been added on to.
Right.
So the structures, mass timber, but all different forms of mass timber. Some are locked logs, some are post and beam, large planks. We're even infusing some glue lams and laminated joists. It's sort of wood construction through the ages, and all sorts of rustic type of finishes, rusted galvanized roofs and things like this. So that's very interesting. So we're still involved with custom residential, but also about 5 years ago, we began our first large-scale commercial project, which is a heritage preservation original house with a mass timber high-performance envelope addition to the rear. And I guess I should sort of step back a little bit. When one of my right-hand guy, Kyle England, joined me in 2004, he had done a thesis on biomimicry, which is using natural biology, what you see in nature biologically, and how can we translate that into physics and physical form of building, and mimicking biology in our physical form to further enhance our architecture and make it more sustainable.
Yeah.
Anyway, he joined, and one of the first books we read was Cradle to Cradle by Will McDonough, which is sort of the seeds of recycling economy within the building and within all of economy, but really hit home with the building industry. So I started to look at tying my love for mass timber with high performance envelopes and biomimicry and looking at the envelope of the building as a skin that lives and breathes, and how can we use that skin to regulate the temperature, just as the skin regulates the temperature of your body. What are we doing with the skin of our buildings, with the envelope of our buildings? And when you think about it, really, architecture is the envelope. The beauty of architecture is the envelope wrapping up that space, wrapping up a structure, being created by the structure, wrapping the structure. It's creating the mass, it's creating the void, and it's the separation. And when I say envelope, I mean the walls, the floor, the foundation slab, foundation walls, exterior walls, roof. That exterior envelope that separates the interior from the exterior. Mm-hmm. That is what architecture, that's what building is. We're creating shelter in all its different uses, whether it's a house or an office building or a hospital. It's creating a shelter, and that shelter is defined by the envelope. And that envelope is biomimicry talks about that envelope being the skin of the building, and we often refer to it the skin of the building, and how we clad that skin, and what's happening underneath that skin of the building, the insulation, the air barriers, the vapor barrier, how it's assembled the technology 100 years ago was very, very simple, even 50 years ago. And it's evolved immensely over the past 25 years. Yeah. And pushed by sustainability and pushed by energy. And how do we make our envelopes more robust so that we're using less energy to heat and cool our buildings? And that's really...
And also to assemble and build them.
Make it simpler to assemble.
Yeah.
Make them more durable.
Yes.
Longevity. One of the cornerstones of sustainability is building something and having it last for centuries. When the sustainability of the Acropolis, even though it's in disrepair, there you have stones that are the marbles that are 2,000 years old. There's temples in Kyoto that were built in 660 AD that are still standing.
Yeah, my buddy just got back. His wife's family's from Kyoto, and I forgot he was there. Sorry, I know that I'm.
Yeah. But you go around and
he's like it's just amazing here.
How old,
Yeah.
and Austrian timber homes and Tudor homes, and how they reinvigorate through in Italy and France, and when you walk through some of these ancient stone buildings, and they're still here today. All these old envelopes, and how do you make that envelope perform?
Yeah.
And so why I sort of digress into this, that happened, the beginnings of that in my mind happened when Kyle came aboard, And we've been looking at how to layer sustainability into the homes that we're doing. And now we've taken it into a mid-rise commercial building where it was a heritage home, 100-year-old home, where we're gutting it right back down to the brick, double wide brick, and then employing insulations, air barriers, breaking the thermal bridges so there isn't a loss of heat through the envelope of this existing heritage, and then tying it to a mass timber addition that has a high performance envelope around it, and it's engineered wood. This is now not bug killed virgin timber. It's 2x4 lumber that has been glued together, laminated together. Glue lams is the technical term of these pieces, as well, and that's columns and posts and beams, and then floor slabs out of CLT, which is cross laminated timber. And just imagine giant pieces of plywood layered up 5, 6, 7, 10 layers, 9 layers, usually odd layers, 5, 7, 9 layers thick, sometimes 40, 50, 60 feet long, 8 feet wide, and they're just large slabs that we can build walls and floor slabs. And this is being attached as it's a 4-story but 8-story ready. There's another part of sustainability. So
what I find so interesting about this right now is you're talking about, it's called 6, 7 layers worth of as you describe it, plywood, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to you in your first 4 years of University of Illinois.
Yeah.
And you're in that class. That is, what did you say it was? It was a quantum.
Oh, well,
you started rubbing
statistical indeterminate.
There it is.
The very start of it is statistically indeterminate structure. So it's
right.
Where you got 2 variables and more. And yeah.
So like you take that education and now here it is in, like, I assume in some form of application.
Yeah.
Years and years later.
Yeah.
And you can appreciate what the structural engineers are coming up with to be able to make this all happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
And
I just like rounding out these things.
Yeah. Please. I'm just stream of consciousness here, really.
Yeah. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Well, this is great. I'm enjoying myself.
Okay, good.
Are you enjoying yourself?
Yeah. I mean, what I am actually, like, in some ways frustrated with when I do this is that I, as a part of the recording, I look and I have to monitor time.
Where are we?
And we're getting toward the tail end of it, but I'm monitoring time. And,
okay.
And it kills me because I just want to keep going.
Well, we can, we can always
do. I was going to say, might have to do a part 2.
You can always do part 2.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So now we're integrating mass timber into commercial space, and now we're looking at. We now have a housing crisis.
Yep.
And we need more rental housing.
Yep.
We need more housing of all kinds.
Of course.
Toronto has just released its bylaws to allow for 4-plex plus 1 garden suites and laneway suites on all R-zoned residential properties.
Yep.
Which is tremendous. There's going to be probably a lot of blowback in a lot of the neighborhoods when they start to see a 4-plex beside their single-family home. But we do need density. We do need more housing, and I'm confident that the architects and builders will be coming up with all sorts of variations on these themes.
Solving that, yeah.
Yeah, and the neighborhoods will be just as vibrant, robust, and comfortable and communal as,
if not
they
more.
are.
I mean, I'll tell you this: that one of the interesting conversations that I had with Heather Doubledam was talking about how trying to integrate elements of what you see in Europe in our communities here, and that is where the density is higher.
Yeah.
But then you're not utilizing the large scale grocery stores anymore. Now you're utilizing like the little markets that are local to the neighborhood. And so you're going and you're picking up your groceries for the next day or 2 or 3 from those local markets versus the big big, large, grocery stores, and you're eating within your community versus going and commuting towards a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens with the influx of the density.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And neighborhoods actually become more neighborhood centric.
Yes.
Than previously.
And then you start to getting out of your car.
Yeah.
And you're starting to do more without having to get in your car and drive and get this and get that and the other thing. But you can now you can walk, and now you can do, or take a quick bike ride,
yes.
or and still have your car, but now not necessarily. And I think it's actually going to lead to points where and the youth of our societies are now starting to understand that they don't really need a car, and they can start using Uber and rideshare and like this when they need a car. And all of a sudden that sort of frees up the streetscape. It frees up the actual plot of land, so that we're not working so much with cars.
Well, imagine a scenario where Ministry of Transportation would refine its bylaws and not require you to have parking at your house.
Well, yeah. They're already
imagining that happened.
Well, it's already
in the works.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So we got to.
Yeah.
We got to wrap up.
I mean, we've done a lot talking about some of these key points, and I will tell you, yes, I'm going to have you back on. Yes, we're going to talk about this more, because I'm going to eventually have roundtable discussions, and this whole element of what we're talking about now in density here in the city of Toronto will be one of those roundtable topics, and I'm excited by that, because I think
good.
A lot of people will get fired up.
Mm-hmm.
What I do want to do really briefly, and you talked about this before, talk about your family a little bit, because
my family, well, I'm married to my wife of 31 years. We just had our anniversary on the 28th.
Happy anniversary.
This is going to be shown a little later, but 31 years. Couldn't be happier. She's a great woman. Janet Land is her name. She's an actress, also an author. She's written a book, a World War II book based off a journal that she found of her father's, that traced his tracks through India and Italy during World War II.
Crazy.
And she sort of wrapped it around her family history as a gift to our family. And
is this available for purchase?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good book. And we're going to go away this weekend for a little anniversary getaway.
Nice. Very nice. And you have 3 kids?
I have 3 kids. My oldest daughter, Madeline, she is 29.
Yeah.
She's just been engaged to Mitch, who they live in Vancouver.
Congratulations to the 2 of you.
Yes, we're thrilled.
I would say, I guess, no, maybe there's more than 2 of you. 2 of them, you 2, and I guess the others. So congratulations, everyone.
Yeah. And there's a nice tie-in here in that when we first met Mitch, or second time we met Mitch, he came back to one of our cottage complexes that we had done up in Georgian Bay.
Yeah.
And the owner, one of our very best clients, offered his place for a week to just enjoy the cottage that we'd used. And they came and they had a drone and they started videoing the place while we were just using it, just kayaking around and and it's a mass timber.
Yeah.
Was that a bird?
I don't know what that was.
We're sitting in a beautiful studio here, Jonathan's studio in his backyard. Fabulous house you have here. I'm really impressed with what you've done.
Thank you.
And the windows to the backyard, and hopefully the hummingbird didn't
fly into the window. Sorry.
So just
drones.
Quickly finish. So they and I looked at the cuts or the dailies, and I said, "Wow, these are fantastic. Can you make a video for our firm, for our website?" And they did. Sure. It's Burrett's Island on our website. And it's tying back to the cake. I said to them, just let the architecture be a character in whatever your video. and they've done that. And there's lots of people and things and birds and chirping and crickets and water and so that's now on our website. And now they are videographers. They've just completed the third project.
I've watched it. This is what you posted on Instagram in the last couple of weeks.
We haven't posted this one.
What did you posted some video of the sustainable?
That would be that was the second one that they did up at Eugenia Lake.
Yeah.
That's a
Net
zero
building.
net zero ready. We're just doing an analysis on how much we don't have to put solar panels on the whole roof. It's going to get anyway. My son Liam, he's working in construction. Hi, Liam. He's enjoying that. He's working all over. He's worked for a number of different contractors.
Yeah. What's up, Liam?
And he's starting to go into apprentice carpentry.
Yep.
And he's turned into a golfer. Our golf is what we like to do as sort of a passion. He's an incredible golfer.
Yep.
And then our youngest, Charlotte, is finishing up. She's working at a firm, Creos, and she just gave notice and they were crushed. She's been crushing it, but wanted to go to London and experience kind of a trip like I did way back when. She's definitely her own woman. And she's all excited, just got her visa.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Close things out here. I'm going to say yes. I've had a few of them, but there'll definitely be a part 2 to this because I feel like we've scratched the surface on some of this.
Well, I'd love to come back and talk and delve deeper into sustainable.
Yes.
And net zero and multi-unit housing.
Yes.
I'm happy to be part of a roundtable if you want
to
do that.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah. I also, as I say to everyone, like I know that there are deliverables and you have clients that are out there that are expecting things and there's builders out there that require things. But I have to say that I appreciate the fact that you take time out of your day and your schedule to be able to do this. I think it's really rewarding for me to be able to gain the knowledge, but then also for others in the industry and prospective clients, whoever, to be able to gain some level of perspective as to what you've gone through in your life and what's led you to now and what's leading you forward. So I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm humbled by it. I appreciate it. And I thank you for it.
Well, my pleasure. And Jonathan, I want to thank you for inviting me because this is part of the dialogue back and forth between builders and architects and everybody that's in part of the ecosystem, the construction industry. It's fantastic. And I love what you're doing here. That you've had great success, very well accomplished architects that you've been interviewing, and your plans for creating roundtables and coordinating discussions and the community. It's fantastic.
I appreciate
the art of the communication is key. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm gonna close by saying this. This is the podcast called Behind the Build. It's powered by Walden Homes. Okay. And I'm going to do a plug for our company. And the reason I'm going to do it is because we strongly at Walden believe in the idea of collaboration and the format of being able to create a podcast and be able to have the community of architects and designers and consultants. I'm going to have consultants coming on here that are in lighting and code consultants. And there's going to be a deep dive into what this industry is. It's all powered by the concept that Bruce Borden and Danny Morris, who are the principals of Walden, they took the reins off of me a couple of years ago and they let me run. And I come back for water and food and I come back for shelter. But they've allowed me to go out there and pursue these endeavors and they enable it. And as a result of that, we go out there and we have these incredible conversations and relationships with people in the industry. And so it's a Walden venture, and I'm thankful for the opportunities. So thank you for being part of it.
Okay. Well, we'll see you later.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.